Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to the Daily Drop-In Morning Show where the Teach Better team is live every single morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Or shout out to those of you listening on the Teach Better Talk podcast. We so appreciate you being here, even if you're not live with us, so you can participate in all the shenanigans. We are going to have a wonderful, wonderful kickoff to your Wednesday, December 15th this morning. Monica Burns is here. We are going to have a fun little celebration around the holidays today. We have a good news article. And then, of course, we'll be continuing our theme this week about supporting all of our learners. We've discussed UDL, differentiation, and how we're going to continue to foster that conversation this morning. Please go fill up your coffee, and we'll be right back. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Drop-In Morning Show with the Teach Better team. We're thrilled that you're here. It is Wednesday, December 15th, and it is going to be a good one. Monica, how are you?
I am great, thank you. Really excited to be here with you this morning.
Oh, I'm so thrilled that you're here. So appreciative that you're here. We were actually able to name drop you about 100 times over the last week. So I just thought it was so fabulous that you were scheduled for today. People get to meet you and learn all about you as we've been referring to you as this like phenomenal person in our network. We've referenced your book numerous times. It's just so fun to have you. I was going to say have you here in the flesh isn't quite right, but like almost, you know?
Oh yeah, right. Our version of it, at least this year, I feel like.
It's true. Oh my gosh. And I know that we have been able to see each other in person, but now with COVID, I have not seen you for years. So I'm thrilled to be able to have this conversation with you this morning.
Well, I'm just excited to be here and saw some of those great social shout outs last week. So I'm so glad that we had this on the calendar for today.
It worked out wonderfully. You know, Monica, you do so much in the space of education. I wouldn't even be able to do you justice because while you're truly my go-to for technology, I know that you do so much more than just discuss tech tools. Like that your work that you do is so beyond that element. I would love to have you share a little bit about yourself. I know that you do a ton in education, but give us the overview. I know most people are already connected to the work that you're doing, but who are you and what are your passion spaces?
Well, thank you for that intro. Yeah, so I am based here on the East Coast. I'm a former New York City public school teacher, and I've been out of the classroom for several years now, running professional development for educators, so both on-site and face-to-face. Just last week, I was with educators out in Wisconsin and Arizona for a conference, which was a lot of fun. And yesterday, I was on a webinar with teachers during one of their planning periods, talking about all sorts of tech adjacent topics, right? So using technology in lots of different ways, but really rooted in whatever a problem of practice might be for a group, if we're doing some small group work, or some big ideas if I'm doing a session or workshop or keynote, like earlier this month. I was gonna say earlier this week, but I guess last week at this point. Mm-hmm.
No, I love that term tech adjacent. Tell me a little about that.
Yeah. So when we're using digital tools to do all sorts of things, the phrase I often use is tasks before apps. So really focusing in on the learning goal, placing that learning front and center. So the technology's there. It has a really important role. It can do a lot of things, right? Talking about differentiation of content, of process, of product, all of those pieces. It can really help facilitate that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the main focus or top of the list, but it's there to help get all of the other pieces done.
Well, and I think that that's why I've always been drawn to the work you do. Anytime you're speaking, I love to hear you share on so many different topics because it's not just that you are a guru in how to use Flipgrid or oh my gosh, you're my go-to to answer my Google questions. It's not just about the technology, but you are consistently focused on what are we aiming to do and can technology support? And And if it can't, then that isn't your suggestion. But looking at what the
Mhm.
task is prior to just bringing in something that you find neat or cool is really a powerful reminder for all of us as we continue to utilize technology intentionally. Is it's not about the resource itself, it's about the problem initially. So I really value that about you, and I'm thrilled that we're gonna be able to dive into that a little bit more today.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. It's definitely front of mind for me when looking at resources, making recommendations, really trying to anchor all of those pieces in what our big goals actually are.
So tell me a little bit about how you got to this point. I mean, obviously you've been traveling and supporting educators. I know you do that so consistently in your work. You've published books, you have a podcast. I mean,
Mhm.
you are really eager to share and support, which I so appreciate and value. I'm a learner with you as well. So when you're looking at kind of where you are now, where did this passion come from? How did you get to this point where you are now getting to coach educators through utilizing technology intentionally?
Well, I started my career as an educator, so in a classroom with an elementary education background. And after several years of teaching in a pretty traditional classroom, chalk and a chalkboard, overhead projector, all of those great things, we were able to go one to one with iPad. So that was our device of choice. And that's going back 10 years or so now. And so at that time, it was pretty early on with just the different decisions schools were making, both where I am in New York or in other places. And so the team at Apple Education actually had asked me to come in and share some different ideas and resources at a local event that they were having in New York. Turned out to be a little bit bigger or a lot a bit bigger than I kind of thought it was as I went to go and share some things for my classroom. And that's really where the blog, the Twitter feed at that time was probably the number one in terms of social started, based on people asking questions, asking if I could tell them more about different things, and really seeing that need to share the stories from my classroom and the different things that I was excited about. And yeah, this year coming up will be 10 years with classtechtips.com, which is wild already, and 3 years of the Easy Ed Tech podcast.
Wow. Wow. And why does the podcast exist? Tell me a little bit about the podcast.
Yeah, so I am a big podcast consumer. I know you have a wonderful podcast feed, and I'm a big podcast consumer and have been for a while. And when I was, putting my blog post together and having all of those kind of thoughts about the blog for so long, I was really focused on that as a format. And I honestly, I had people just ask me, like, are you going to do a podcast? Are you thinking about sharing this way? And for as much as I love the medium, I was really hesitant to bite off another way to share content. It's a production, literally, right? And I know you know that better than a lot of people that I talk to. Just all the things that go on behind the scenes to make it happen. So a few years ago, it'll be 3 years in March, I decided that I did have the capability. I could wrap my head around a format that I wanted to follow and what my publishing schedule would look like. I was really just ready to commit to it. I don't like doing things until I know that I have really the time or the space, especially something new.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun. And I started off really just revamping some older blog posts and updating them and sharing new pieces. And then it really took about a year or so before I even felt like I could handle having guests, having people come at a certain time. You on the episode that you're featured in goes live next Tuesday. And, part of that has been being home more and not having a wild travel schedule where I can actually say, yes, I can record on these days or whatever that might mean. And having the interview component this past year and a half or so has just been wonderful and a lot of fun about the podcast.
Oh, it's so cool. And I know that I've been subscribed to your podcast for a long time. Hopefully, those of you, by the way, if you are listening to Daily Drop In this morning on your favorite podcast listening service, don't forget to head over and check out Monica's podcast as well. It's right there. So it's just a few clicks away. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. That really helps all podcasts continue to reach a larger audience, which we really love to chat about. It's so funny, Monica. I feel like as I was listening to podcasts, I had no idea how valuable it was to hit that subscribe button or how valuable it was to
Mhm.
rate and review. I kind of always assumed, oh, Apple just wants to like get my feedback so it can better support me. But actually, those actions are so much more powerful for supporting other people. And so, if you are an educator right now reflecting on being able to support other educators, hitting subscribe or liking, reviewing a podcast actually is a very simple way for you to help other
Mhm.
educators around the globe consider listening to content that's going to be supportive of them learning. So just something to consider. But I never really knew that. Somebody had to teach me that. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel that way, and I'm sure you too probably do more rating and reviewing as a creator now, right? You just have I know I'm like much more likely to jump and give an Amazon review of something because I know it helps, right? It
Yes.
helps that person whose stuff that I really like, and same thing goes with the podcast. Mhm.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was listening to, God, this must have been years ago. I was listening to a podcast I really, really enjoyed. And they kind of did this little snippet similar to what we just did a few seconds ago of
Mhm.
like, hey, I don't know if you knew this, but like it really helps. And at the time, I was like, well, I really enjoy this podcast. I really enjoyed the host at the had so much that I was like, well, if I can do something to support people that I've essentially fostered a relationship with, I love
Mhm.
listening to them sharing their insight. It's kind of cool that I get to support their work in some way without purchasing something, right? Like without buying a
Mhm.
product. And I just always loved that little tidbit. I appreciated that in their segment they mentioned, hey, this is helpful because again, we can only do so much with the information we have. And if you can advocate for something that is supporting, yourself or supporting other educators, why not? So
Right.
anywho, if you guys are
Mhm.
podcast consumers, go take care of that. That would be so wonderful. Monica, I know that I've been on the show. I'm excited for that episode to come out.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that format in case people are not yet subscribed and they want to go and be a listener.
Yeah, so the new episodes of my Easy EdTech podcast go live on Tuesday mornings, and it's a combination of interviews like the one that you and I did together will go up next Tuesday, and solo episodes where I'll jump in, I'll share some different tips. So today's Wednesday, right? So yesterday's episode was all about emojis and things about emojis that might surprise you. So different classroom connections, different pieces. I actually put up an Instagram reel yesterday evening that kind of gave a tease of a few of the tips from the episode. So usually anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes. The interview episodes are on the longer side of that. The solo episodes are on the shorter side of that. And each episode has a full transcript. Sometimes I turn them into a blog post later on, but all the transcripts are right there for people to read or just take a peek at. And I have a landing page for each episode on my website. So I follow that kind of alternating, 2 weeks or so, there'll be interviews, 2 weeks or so, there'll be solos. So some alternating like that. And then I've done a few different Sunday bonus episodes, really just this year, which has been different. So I'm sure just like you, I have a lot of folks that reach out that are working with an ed tech company or that have a really specific perspective because they're on that side of the industry. So I've been able to put together some bonus episodes in partnership with different people, which has been really fun to just hear their stories, not really talk necessarily about their tool or platform, but be able to share kind of big ideas around pop culture and online learning as when we did one on financial literacy and ed tech. So just really fun conversations that are a little bit different that I started doing this year.
Oh, I love that format. I think that's so neat. And to be honest, it's the perfect length of time, especially where
Mhm.
I just moved. I feel like everything is within like 12 to 20 minutes. I can get to like
Mhm.
anything on the planet. Nobody can name something that I don't have access to within that time. And it's
Mhm.
perfect to be able to pop that on in the car or listen in between
Oh
meetings.
yeah.
I know like daily drop in is much longer. We're looking at a 45-minute to hour long show that just has a different feel depending on when you are choosing to listen to podcasts. So if you're an educator right now and you're thinking like, oh, I have 12 minutes every so often, I have 15 minutes here and there. I totally support not only your podcast, but other podcasts that have that length. It's just perfect little tidbits
Mhm.
to learn and continue to reflect on our practices. So I really appreciate you sharing that. It's a great format.
Thanks. Yeah, it's just been so much fun. And I don't know that I kind of anticipated that I would love doing that format as much as I do. And, I think there's this other level of a personal connection when someone hears your voice or they hear how enthusiastic you are about something. And, I was in Wisconsin just last week at an event, and someone, came up to me and said, I listen to your podcast while I walk my dog, like just on, I'm like, I listen to podcasts when I empty the dishwasher. Like, it's all funny, like how we have these different routines, like you mentioned. And those shorter podcasts, I think, can be really nice to tie to something that we might, already be doing. Will listen to podcasts probably more than watching television, frankly, in the house. But if I'm really into something, I'll keep it playing when I jump on the Peloton, or I'll, put those earbuds in while I'm walking, just to kind of get through or finish up something. So I love it as a creator. I love it as a consumer. And it's a great way to just have a little bit more of a personal connection, I think, with a content creator too.
I love the dishwasher idea. You're totally right. I listen to podcasts all the time while like cleaning or like picking things up. I feel like it motivates me
Mhm.
to clean or pick things up for a longer period of time because I'm like, oh, the podcast has 5 more minutes. I should finish up what I'm
Right.
doing here. Like, oh, it's so
Mhm.
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Monica, we're going to get into our next segment, which is all about good news, sharing good news. There's some holidays we're going to celebrate. And then I do want to get into some deep discussion on not only our theme this week, but also your insight, sharing a little bit more about technology resources, your approach with supporting educators, ensuring that they're pick the right tools for themselves. I'm such a fan of all this work. So we'll be right back. Stick with us. Good morning, everyone. We are so thrilled that you are here with us. Good morning. Thank you for all the messages. Good morning in the comments. I'm sorry we've been showing them on screen, but have not yet got to give all those shout outs. So good morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for commenting and being an active participant rather than only a consumer. Obviously, it's bright and early, so we understand if you are listening to this and walking around your house, picking out your clothes, maybe even brushing your teeth, but we also love to hear from you. So shout out to those of you who are choosing to pop in the comments. Such a wonderful way to participate live. Also, if you are listening after the fact, whether you're catch us on YouTube or like we referred to numerous times on the podcast, we always appreciate screenshots and then sharing that out so we can interact with you that way. It is Wednesday, December 15th, and there are a lot of holidays. Monica, I have a very, very intimate question for you, but I need you to be fully honest with your answer. What are your thoughts on cupcakes?
I love cupcakes. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we have had some heated discussions about cupcake flavors and cupcakes on the show.
Mhm.
I don't know why there are so many days to celebrate cupcakes, but today's a big one. It is International Cupcake Day, which I feel like we've already had, but I will tell you more than anything, it is also World Lemon Cupcake Day, which is apparently a separate
Ooh.
holiday that happens at the exact same time. So, are you a lemon cupcake fan or are there other cupcake flavors that you enjoy?
I'll have to, I mean, I am chocolate all the way, normally. If there's a whole bunch of cupcakes and there's one that I'm going to grab, as much as I love to try different flavors or be, more ready to explore, more adventurous, chocolate's always going to be my first grab. But I do love like lemon poppy pastries or lemon scones. Lemon ricotta pancakes is now coming to mind as I'm thinking about all these like lemony baked goods. So I'm very much there for lemons as a flavor in general and in baked goods.
I am a huge lemon fan, but I will tell you when you go get a cupcake, lemon's not always an option. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that if you and I went to Molly's Cupcakes down the street here in my town that I just moved in, I don't know if they'd have a lemon cupcake, but I hope today they would on December 15th for this holiday.
Yeah, and at this point, I can pretty much ensure everyone listening that I will be eating some sort of baked goods after this conversation. Because whether it's me going on a hunt for cupcakes or just getting tempted, because starting the morning with this conversation, I'm pretty sure there's something sweet in my future today.
I think that's essential. And I think whether it's chocolate, red velvet, vanilla, lemon, I want to challenge all of you, even though I feel like I've said this sentence before. So I apologize on the Daily Drop In Show. You know, we do the show every morning. We've been doing it for about 4 months. And I don't even care if we repeat our content, friends and family. Today, the rule, go eat a cupcake. Like, that's just going to be the challenge of the day. We'll make it happen.
Love it.
In addition to our cupcake day, which, okay, this is the problem. Brad Hughes is now debating the difference between cupcakes and muffins. He's throwing in English muffins. You know, you can do an English muffin for breakfast, Brad, but a cupcake is going to need to be a requirement at some point throughout your day. Don't fight the power. You got to make it happen. In addition to Cupcake Day, it is also International Tea Day. Monica, are you a coffee or tea person?
I am a tea drinker. I am a very tea. I mean, I love coffee. But I don't start my day with coffee. I mean, I guess I have a Keurig somewhere here in the house, but I never use it. That's how somewhere it is. So I will go and grab a cup of coffee sometime in the afternoon. Not every day. I try not to every day, but a couple of days a week. But I drink tea all day long. Yeah, all about that.
You know, I meet a lot of people that say they don't like tea, which in my opinion means that they just haven't tried the right tea because there's so many flavors.
Mhm.
Do you have a tea that is like your go-to later this afternoon? If you grab a cup of tea, is there a specific type of brand or flavor you are drawn to?
Yeah, I drink a lot of black tea. So whether it's breakfast tea, like an English breakfast tea, or Earl Grey, that's my kind of go-to. I do a lot of loose leaf tea, actually. So I love just all of that. Usually there's a lot going on. I'm looking over here because it's kind of not far. It's out of view here where my whole electric kettle and all the different options are and all those pieces. I love a hibiscus tea. I just saw that in the comments too. That's definitely a favorite, but I tend to drink more caffeinated tea probably than say an herbal tea or anything like that. But yeah, I just all about it.
I love it. Yeah, Elijah is in the comments saying that he does kind of the opposite. He does coffee in the morning and then tea in the afternoon. I also like black teas. I think that that is so wonderful, especially if you're listening, if you're not a tea person, if you're a coffee drinker, black tea has that bitter element. It's not sweet. It's a
Mhm.
little bit more of a different flavor. I think initially when I thought of teas, I thought of like strawberries, raspberries, peaches, like more of that sweet nature, which is not my preference. And so black tea is always a great option for those of you that are interested in trying a tea. I'm seeing in here Indian chai tea. Oh my gosh, that sounds
Ooh.
delicious. Yes. Sign me up for
Yeah,
that.
I'm definitely one of those people that has tea bags in their purse, like just in case. It's funny, I was at an event last week and I'm not used to being back in conferences face to face, right? It's just a different muscle, a different what's in my bag and what have I packed. And I guess I went up to some place that had hot water, but they didn't have any tea. And I was like, actually, it's not a problem because I have a whole bunch of tea bags in my purse, like a little old lady that just likes what she likes.
Yeah,
And
I
I
feel like
had my
yeah,
moment.
old women that have, the tea bags and Jolly Ranchers and all those things. Like it's good to
Exactly.
have
Yeah.
snacks and options in your purse.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. It's like, I'm not embarrassed about this because it's really coming in handy right now.
Well, it sounds like today is your day, Monica. It is International Tea Day, so definitely step aside from the coffee or the Coca-Cola this morning and go have a wonderful tea beverage before the end of your day. Maybe try the flavors to see what you like. So that would be a wonderful opportunity. The other two holidays are a little strange. I don't know. I don't know how we celebrate these, but one is National Cat Herders Day. Disclaimer, this holiday is not dedicated to cats. I'm not quite sure what that means. So I might have to dive into that one more. It's also National Wear Your Pearls Day. So if you are a female or male that enjoys beautiful pearls, today is your day to rock those out. Yeah. I can honestly say I don't know that I've had a string of pearls on in a very long time, but I guess today's the time to rock out, whether it be the fake costume pearls or maybe something more
Mhm.
official, add it to your get up today. I like it.
I love that. Yeah, how fun.
Yeah. The big news story for today, I thought this would be really fun. Monica, when we do our good news stories, we like
Mhm.
to discuss how it can be a discussion starter for a friend or colleague that you're fostering a relationship with at work. It can also be something that you bring to your students to foster dialogue. I thought this would be a really interesting one, regardless of the grade level, to be able to share with students because it has to do with an amazing animal that is not cited quite often at all. And we just had an incredible sighting. So there also is a video. I do want to preface there's a video connected to this that would be very, very cool to incorporate into your classroom. So as you listen to this small tidbit this morning, I encourage you to Google it. I think you're going to find a lot of content because this really was a big deal that just happened recently. This article was published yesterday, and it says amazing video of a giant jellyfish. It's a giant phantom jellyfish from the deep and dark fathoms of the ocean at 3,200 feet. So as they're looking, they said researchers in California recently captured footage of one of the most striking sea creatures you'll ever see. It has this beautifully long scientific name, but as many of us would call it, it's literally just a giant phantom jellyfish seen only 9 times by researchers over the span of 1,000 different diving trips. They just saw this incredible animal. Never has this creature been seen so accurately depicted. They had got a really good view of it. And they not only saw the body, but the head and the belly of this incredible animal that has 4 30-foot long tentacles, which I cannot quite even understand how incredible that must have been. Something really interesting that I want to make sure I note just to grab your attention as you're thinking about bringing this to your schools is that this was last seen in 1899, and it has only been seen a few times since. And this is a very rare sighting. It says it's typically found between 3,200 and 12,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. And they just went through and talked about the history of this animal. It is an incredible looking animal that's really hard to get photos of because there's no light where it exists. But shout out to those of us that love animals and love a good jellyfish sighting because this one seems incredible.
That is so wild. I cannot imagine coming across that kayaking or doing any type of water sports or even just peeking over the edge of any type of environment where you might look deep into the water. That is just wild.
Yeah, I'm more of a stay on the surface or just below like the top of, I can tread water really well. Brad Hughes and I have discussed before, even going scuba diving, like I don't know that I'm going to go more than 30 feet. So as I'm looking here at even 3,000 feet below the surface, I just couldn't even imagine, much less the creatures that live down there is just amazing. So definitely an interesting fun fact to bring to your students. An animal that isn't normally seen is just a concept that I think could be a really rich discussion. So very cool. Monica, we have had such great dialogue. We've been live for 26 minutes. I appreciate everybody in the comments. I'm getting text messages about this morning dialogue, so I can't wait to continue it. But I really would love to dive deeper. Dive deeper into your expertise, your approach to utilizing technology, especially to reach our learners and everything else. So we're going to transition here into Brainstorm Bank, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll be right back, friends. Okay, I got a text message from Dana Kirby, who's in the comments right now, that says, Cat Herders Day means teach PE. I don't know that that's true, but I get that, because like teaching PE sometimes feels like you're herding cats. That's funny. I'm just like, yeah. I'm gonna have to read more about this. And Dana Kirby, I will update you on all the things of this holiday that I know nothing about and let you know if it's specifically for our PE teachers, because sometimes I know you feel like you're herding cats. Monica, our Brainstorm Bank is an intentional time where we ask our friends and family in the Teach Better community, hey friends, do you need anything? We know that every single day we are constantly brainstorming and finding solutions to the problems we see in our classrooms. And we want to emphasize that you do not need to brainstorm alone. Monica and I, as well as the entire Teach Better community, are here to brainstorm with you. We don't promise we have all the answers, but we definitely want you to know that we are eager to try and hopefully connect you with the right resource. So if you have questions as we get started in our day, please feel free to throw them in our chat. Monica, in the work that you do, how do you feel like the work you continue to work on with teachers fosters discussion around differentiating and supporting our learners?
Well, it's definitely been an area that, I talk about for a while now. And sometimes it's in the context of different types of activities. So it might be around differentiating the content that we're distributing to students. So if we're talking about curation in the classroom as kind of a big topic with a group, often looking to say, how can we get those just right resources in the hands of different students? If we're looking at a way for kids to share their learning, our conversations might be more around the choice or the different features within a digital space to say, it doesn't matter to me how you let me know that you can tell the difference between numerators and denominators. If you record your voice and tell me, if you jump on video and tell me, if you type out your response and tell me, right? All of that will let me kind of have that internal thumbs up, like that student understands something. So it might be happening, when we're handpicking resources with more of a curation lens, when we're assessing students, right, with that checking for understanding lens, or there may even be moments where you're thinking about differentiated instruction as it connects to the type of product a student might make for more of a long-term type of deep dive or exploration into a topic too. And it's one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of open-ended creation tools, or tools that give you that blank canvas where kids can jump in, make something that might accomplish the same goal as one of their classmates, but the end result will look really different than the person sitting next to them, or who's giving them maybe some feedback along the way.
As you're recommending a, resource to an educator, is there a specific way that you can suggest educators hunt to find the right tools to support their learners?
Yeah, so thinking about just even building out your tech tool belt, I'm first and foremost encouraging, especially this year with just so much going on, for educators to what I will call, embrace your place, right? If you are being told that you have to use a certain LMS, stick with it, right? Don't try and bring in something else just because. Yes, another thing might be better. The one that was chosen for you might not be the best one, and there might be other reasons why you would have chosen something different. But just for the sake of keeping things smooth, especially this year, really embracing your place or those spaces that you're being asked to use is something that I've been just emphasizing a little bit more than I might have a few years ago. And I think we can all speak to just the importance of keeping things streamlined, easy for students and families to know where to go, but then also being part of a school community or district where you can speak some common language around that learning management system, even if it's not, sometimes maybe there's a little frustration level to that conversation, but that same problem solving or brainstorming or just having some thought partners in your community is just kind of one thing to consider. Also, kind of coming back to those open-ended creation tools, I was just recording an episode of my podcast that'll go live in January talking about I think the title is something like just 3 tech tips for this year. Like, don't go crazy, right? And one of the things that, I talk about there is, pick a tool that you can use for a lot of projects, not a different tool for every time you do a new project with students. Try to find something that's flexible where you can introduce everyone to it with that extra onboarding time, and then just revisit it with maybe different features or different things that you're looking for students to do within that space. So those are the kind of conversations of just being strategic, building your tool belt with kind of the long term in mind, and then also thinking about how you can just save time throughout the school year too.
Monica, I love your emphasis on ensuring that you know the problem you're trying to solve before you go find a technology resource. Because, like you said, we all are using technology all the time. If you're going to take the time to go hunt for something new, learn something new, introduce something new, there really does need to be that core fundamental of, okay, why? What is this solving? What's our goal? If I'm an educator listening this morning, or even just thinking through a problem that I have. Let's say I've identified a problem. I'm saying, okay, I don't have access to a resource right now that does this one thing that I really know is going to support my learners. Once I've identified the problem, how do I then find the tool? Sometimes I feel like we suggest concepts and ideas and we tell people the first step, but don't always support them in finding then the second and third step that comes with that. So let's pretend I do know my problem. I do know what I'm trying to solve. what's then the next step that I can take to actually find the support I'm looking for?
Yeah. So one thing I would suggest is, once you have that kind of almost like your search term, right? The kind of thing I'm hoping to accomplish. There's a few different places you can go to find answers for those questions or even, inspiration for learning a little bit more about it. And starting off close to home is one that I would suggest, right? Bring that problem of practice, that thing that you're looking for to your school community, to someone who you are mentoring or who is a mentor for you, and kind of open up that conversation in a planning meeting that you might have, or maybe something more informal. So kind of starting in your community, there might be someone who is tackling a similar problem, found a great solution, or kind of can give you a stay away. And this one didn't help when I tried to do it. Let's go look for something different. Then I would say taking a look at some social communities, whether it's a great Facebook group that you are a member of, whether you regularly participate in Twitter chats or different places where you can, jump into a community space and pose a question. There's just so many people who are kind of out there and passionate about education technology, and you might find someone in one of those groups who can support you. And then I would say the next piece is really going out and taking a look at some of the content that is out there, that's regularly updated, that is being pushed out in a few different places, whether that is kind of proactively signing up for a newsletter that focuses on something around education technology, or jumping into a podcast, right? Like we talked about earlier, so that you can just kind of have some fresh information, and you don't know necessarily when you're going to need it, but you can feel confident that you are up to date and well informed, and have something like that you can, come back to. And I can't speak for everyone who creates content in this space, but I know that, when someone follows me on Twitter, I usually reach out, or, kind of say, do a quick hello, feel free to ask me something, or people will reach out on Instagram and send a DM. And I'm always happy to jump into those kind of, do you know about this kind of questions? And it always makes me smile when maybe someone, says, I saw you at ISTE 4 years ago, dot, dot, dot. Here's my question. And now I have a question to ask you. And maybe they didn't, when we were all together at ISTE. And I always say it, at presentations, or, reply to this email, or let me know. And so I try my best to communicate that sort of, availability, if you will. And it's always makes me smile when someone kind of does that outreach, even if it feels maybe a little delayed after. It's always just makes me happy. Mm-hmm.
I love so many things about what you just shared, but the one thing I do want to make sure I emphasize to our community is I find so many educators identify their problem and then they turn to Google. And Google's great. You should Google as many things as possible. I learned so much via Google, but you really saw or made a connection in your answer around utilizing your network, going and finding somebody in your building across the hall or in your virtual learning space to get some insight first. I hope that what you Google, you find the right solution for yourself. But in your explanation here, being able to go to a colleague down the hall who might share your students, or at least works with your student population, has access to the same resources you do, can give you a suggestion that's so much more credited in some regard than just what first thing that pops up on Google, because now you're able to have a dialogue, you're able to weigh pros and cons, maybe you're able to have a learning buddy. I love this focus of being able to search for something by going to people first, whether it be virtually or in person.
Yeah, and it's just, it's also a relationship building opportunity too, right? So if you're working with a group, in your school community, and you bring that problem or you ask that question, right? Now that's someone that knows that they can reach out to you, or that might check in on you, or just kind of build relationships, especially if you were teaching at a distance the past year or two, right? Just to re-engage with someone who maybe, you used to talk to about all the things, or to connect with someone who maybe is more in your orbit now than they were a few years ago when you were face to face in the past. It's also a great way. And, I think you and I could probably speak to this just with how we know each other, connecting on these social spaces, participating in our Twitter chat, reaching out because you know someone is also interested in similar topics. There's a lot of people that I connected first with, in social spaces on a Twitter chat or doing something, like that. And then I went to an event or a conference and saw someone, on an escalator or in the elevator or, in a different spot, and was able to just say, hey, like, I kind of know you, right? And now we can really talk and have a conversation. So there's just a lot of reasons why um, leaning into your communities, whether it's in your school community, a little closer to home, or in social, is really, really powerful.
So good. I know last week, Monica, we were talking about you, so I'm sure your ears were burning because I got your one of your books. I know you've published
Yeah.
about 9,500 different books and resources, but this one specifically, I kept highlighting last week. So as we were talking about you on Daily Drop, and I'm sure your ears are burning, you're like, somebody's talking about me. But on here specifically, it's right on the front cover, it says 100 plus ed tech tools included. To me, this is also a very similar element to going to somebody that is a trusted resource. I know Monica and I talk about it all the time, whether you're here or not, that you're really somebody that I trust going to and gaining insight from. I think that your advice that you give is always very relevant and important to me. And so going to a resource that you've produced, like a blog, a podcast, again, a physical book, to give some of those recommendations also is a familiar space that might be a little bit more personalized and informed than just a Google search sometimes, because of the relationship I've been able to build with you, the trust that I've been able to build in learning from you. And so I can only imagine this book, as well as other resources you provide, is another avenue to find the right resource for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those kind words and just the shout out about the book last week too, and on social this month. I really appreciate it. And, I was really wanting to make sure that there were clear tool recommendations in the book. And, ASCD, who's my publisher, and I kind of chatted about, like, can we put a little note on the front? Can we put that little, faux sticker on there just to let people know? Because, for as much as I don't think you need to have a heavy tool belt with all the things in it, there needs to be some place to get started, right? Or if you're jumping into, say, one of those ed tech essentials for the first time, you might not have a tool that helps accomplish that particular goal. And I was in Arizona for an event this month, and I did a presentation all around formative assessment. And usually in this presentation, and I kind of changed it up a bit for this group, I have a dozen or so strategies that I'll share, and I pair each of them with a tool. So if I'm talking about voice feedback, then I'll mention something like, you can do this with Moat, you can do this, and I'll give some specific examples. But I always start the presentation like, please push back on me. Like, you're going to hear me say this strategy, and I want you to think to yourself, well, couldn't you also do that with CSAT? Like, if I mentioned CSAT earlier, or I think I can do that inside of Teams. And good, like, do it inside of wherever you are. Use that tool in your tool belt. Please, please don't just use this for the sake of it. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm giving some examples for someone who might be at a different part of their journey with all of this work, or who might work with a colleague that would appreciate a new recommendation. So there's that kind of just informative piece of it too. But yeah, I'm right there with you that balance is really important.
So powerful, Monica, and everything you've been able to share. While I know you are such an expert in the space of technology, I will tell you, all these recommendations would work for anything you're struggling with. If you're struggling to reach a learner that you haven't fostered a connection strong enough with to find the right resource to support them, whether it's a technology resource or just a strategy that has nothing to do with technology, I love and appreciate that your emphasis is in communicating with people that you trust, in being able to weigh pros and cons with your network in some regard, and then how you can continue to move forward to connect with other people that can support your mission by identifying the problem first and then all being on this journey together. So extremely powerful. We're going to continue with this mindset of recommendations, because on Wednesdays, our last segment is providing recommendations for our network on how they can continue to foster discussion and exploration in these ideas. So we'll be right back with a commercial that we only get to play on Wednesday. So it's very special for you, Monica. And then we'll get into some recommendations for people to explore after the fact. Thank you for tuning in to Daily Drop-In. We are at the tail end of our conversation here. Monica, it's been so fun to be able to chat with you. Here in a minute, I'm going to have you share how people can stay connected to you. I know you've had your Twitter handle and Instagram handle up on the screen this entire time, but even for those people that are listening on the podcast, we want to make sure they have all the resources humanly possible to connect with the work that you're doing. I do want to ask you, though, if you had a resource to share, if you had one recommendation on something for people to go and challenge themselves with to continue their exploration, whether it be in technology or just making sure that you have resources at your fingertips to differentiate and support all your learners, what would be your recommendation of where they could either get started or continue to foster that exploration?
Yeah. So if you're committed to this idea of really setting up everyone for success and giving them different ways to share their learning, I'm a big fan of Book Creator. I've done some work with their team, and just yesterday was working with a group of educators virtually, even though in New York, I've been with them in person, but we were virtual yesterday. And, we were looking at it specifically for a comic book conversation, right? And we're making comics, and that was kind of what led us in. But then it quickly pivoted to your students can share with a voice note. They can use voice to text. They can copy text in that they've used from a different place. They can snap a picture of an illustration they've made. They can jump on camera. And I say all those things not to be overwhelming with the different options or different choices, but more to say that you can really be strategic. So maybe it's Book Creator, maybe it's another open-ended space with a couple different features to really give kids options to share. But that would be a piece of advice for someone who's committed to differentiate instruction for the second half of the year, who's looking to bring in technology to the conversation to support learners that they work with. It's a favorite, and you can get started with it for free, which is also a reason why I love introducing it as an example when working with educators.
So perfect. I love a good free account. Monica, how can people stay connected to you, the work you're doing? I know social media, but I'd love to hear website, podcast, kind of all that stuff as well.
Yeah, so Class Tech Tips is where you can find me on the web. So that classtechtips.com. I'm actually doing a big website rebrand that's going to go live early next year. So with the 10-year anniversary there. So super excited about that. You can find the podcast right there on the blog, or you can just search for Easy EdTech Podcast in whatever your favorite podcasting app is. And then Class Tech Tips on social. So I share a lot on Instagram and Twitter. You can find the Pinterest and even a couple TikTok videos. No dancing just yet, but like to play around in all these different mediums.
Wonderful. Yes, please go connect with Monica. Continue to add people to your network. And Monica especially is going to be one that you won't regret. For all of our friends and family here, happy Wednesday. We appreciate that you were able to tune in for Daily Drop-In. We wish you nothing but the most amazing Wednesday. It is Wednesday, December 15th. We know you're at the tail end for many people until they head into winter break. But trust me, these are going to be good moments to celebrate with those kiddos before you go on a little bit of break and they miss you like stinking crazy. Monica, thank you so much for joining us. I know it was bright and early, but we really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your insight and all the work that you continue to do to support teachers. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to jump on and chat with you this morning.
So good. For everyone else, we hope that you have the best Wednesday. If you need us, please let us know. Please go enjoy the last final sips of your coffee before you head into the classroom and support the entire school ecosystem. And we will see you later today for our brain break segment. You guys know that you can join Jeff and Dave and whoever else decides to join that over streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Or we will see you tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, for our next Daily Drop-In episode. So have a wonderful day, friends. See you later.